Sex and gender basics. Alright, so, and we covered a little bit of this last week, but we're going to add more on, especially about gender and sexual minorities today. So, people who have unambiguous sexual anatomy, either completely what we conceptualize as male or female. About 99% of people, 98.5, something like that, are like that. And then people with a mixture of male and female sexual anatomy is about 2% of our population. And while that doesn't seem high, just think about the sheer number of people that would be. So like in our class of about 100 people, about 2 of them have sexual anatomy that is a mixture of male and female anatomy, and and then in a population of 1,000 people, then that would be like 20 people. And so I think I have like some data on exactly like about how many people in America are intersex individuals. So this is a good little video that just came out on YouTube talking about how chromosomes and like XY chromosome, XX chromosome, and their affiliation with gender. But this video kind of gets the idea going that biological sex exists on a spectrum, that there's male and female, but there's like all this range in between of how a person may identify. So speaking of gender identity, so remember we talked about gender being feminine or masculine, feminine associated with women, masculine associated with men. And so one's gender identity, so your actual subjective sense of being a man or being a woman, would be one's gender identity. And it's not necessarily tied to one's sexual anatomy. So one may have male sexual anatomy but identify as female, and vice versa. Also, someone may identify as both male and female, or someone may identify as neither male nor female. So as far as not identifying as neither entirely male nor entirely female, kind of another way to say that, as strictly male or strictly female, identify as non-binary as one's gender, but also could be, not identifying as male or female. Yeah. So that binary, and that's where the term comes from, that binary of, which gender are you? Are you male or female? So for non-binary people, they're like, no, I'm not going down that road of saying I am a female, and therefore you can assume all these things about my psychological makeup that I'm carrying and all this sort of stuff. Or no, I'm not exclusively male, in my gender, even if I appear to be, and things like that. Identifying as non-binary, opens these people up to being able to, at some points express themselves as feminine or express themselves as masculine, or neither. So as we talked about before, masculinity being associated with men. And so, people, like if you had a survey and whatnot that had something like, I agree or disagree, my gender is male, most people with male sexual anatomy would be like, yeah, my gender is male, without necessarily, reflecting on whether they embody masculinity and don't exhibit any feminine qualities at all. But as far as gender identity goes, it bears saying again that a person may say, yes, I do identify as a man, but once your sexual anatomy could be male sexual anatomy or female sexual anatomy, or intersex sexual anatomy, yet at the same time identify as a man. And same thing for identifying as a woman, sexual anatomy not having bearing on identifying as a woman. So someone could identify as a woman and have what's traditionally considered male sexual anatomy. So I'm sure a lot of you, especially in the last couple of years, have heard about cisgender. You may be wondering what that is, and that's basically when, like, if you are born with male sexual anatomy and you end up identifying as a man, identifying with masculine ways and whatnot, you would be considered cisgendered. So, the vast majority of people would identify as cisgendered. And this opposes transgender, which we'll get to in a second. And so same thing, a girl who is born with female sexual anatomy, later identifying as a girl and then a woman, and mostly in feminine ways that our society has deemed, then she's also cisgendered. So there's gender identity, your subjective sense of I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm neither man nor woman, I am a mixture of masculine and feminine. That would be one's gender identity. Kind of like, I'll just leave it at that. And gender expression being the outward expression of one's gender. So just me, for example, collared shirt with button down and a little bit of face hair here and whatnot. That expression is what people traditionally consider as masculine or male. So it's not too hard to understand this concept if we keep with women and whatnot, gender expression. So a lot of women obviously wear dresses and things like that, and that's an expression of their gender as female. But some people may have sexual anatomy that's male, but their gender expression is female. And then also people with sexual anatomy, female sexual anatomy, whose gender expression is male. So gender expression and gender identity neither are inherently tied to one's sexual anatomy. So let's get into gender and sexual minorities a little bit more here. So we'll talk about transgender people, non-binary gender people, and intersex individuals. So transgender, an example of this would be a person born with male sexual anatomy, but identifies as female. So that primary definition of transgender, anatomical sex from birth, does not match their gender identity. So someone also who may be born with female sexual anatomy but identifies as male. And so this disparity between one's sexual anatomy and one's gender identity, some people theorize that leads to what's called gender dysphoria, which we'll talk about in a second. But there's a lot of debate on whether a diagnosis of gender dysphoria is warranted, and if it just perpetuates this notion that transgender people are mentally ill in some way. So transgender people traditionally, by psychologists and by biologists and others, considered a disorder, and also like within the Diagnostic and Statistical DSM, the DSM saying that people who their gender identity doesn't match their anatomical sex are mentally disordered in some way. Historically, that's the case. Kind of like for people who are attracted to the same sex as themselves were considered a disorder historically in the DSM, but thankfully we're getting away from that now. So the prevalence rate of people who are transgender is about 0.6. So even though that looks like a small number, remember, how many individuals that would be given a population of 1 million or more. So about, in the US alone, 1.4 million adults, which is very, very sizable. So yes, they are transgender people are a minority, but there is a lot of them, even if you may not be aware of it. So like I was saying, a lot of psychologists have deemed this discomfort one feels. So some transgender people feel a discomfort there, identifying, let's say, for example, as female, but then having male sexual anatomy, having kind of an emotional discomfort about that. And psychologists, at least historically, have labeled that as gender dysphoria. So research has shown that a lot of trans people feel this discomfort starting in childhood. But recent research is showing that transgender children lead well-adjusted lives. So I don't want you to get this idea that transgender people are less mentally healthy necessarily than non-transgendered people. And so some transgender people elect to transition from either male to female or female to male as far as matching up their sexual anatomy to their gender. And this is a really good YouTube video on an adolescent through his experience of transitioning. So hormone treatment and things like that. And it's a really good story of his experience. And for him, it was a female to male transition. He never really felt growing up like, even though he had female sexual anatomy, he never really felt, when he tried to express himself in feminine ways, he never felt true to himself, always feeling much more authentic when he expressed himself as a man, starting to identify as male, but having that gender dysphoria, if you will, about his sexual anatomy. So this was an interesting theme, an interesting study. Transgender individuals thought, so you could look this up if you want to, and this would be good research for some of you to do if you want to do this. For the paper, Transgender Individuals' Thoughts and Experiences Regarding the Transition Process, an Interpretive Phenomenological Analysis. So what that basically is asking these participants in the study who are transitioning from either male to female or female to male sexual anatomy, what is their experience of that transition like? That's basically what that title of their research means. So some major themes were found. So in these studies where they interview people, and it's usually called like qualitative research, that they have a certain set of questions that they ask all the subjects, participants, and then they record their answers verbatim, and then they study the answers. And so themes that emerged from these transgender people who are transitioning, a few themes emerged, one being negative feelings due to the process. So feeling isolated, like other people don't understand what they're going through, just general stress of having to try to day after day pass as the gender one identifies with, depression, because it may feel like one may never be able to really fully embody who they actually are, in frustration, at just how long the process can take and whatnot. And so as far as the diagnosis, that means gender dysphoria. So needs and negative thoughts regarding the diagnosis, such as I'm not ill, like why would you give me this diagnosis of gender dysphoria, or give me a mental health diagnosis when I'm not mentally ill. It's stigmatizing to think that way. And as far as so the master themes, the main themes that came up in this analysis of what it's like for a trans person to transition is so negative feelings through the process of transitioning, negative thoughts towards the diagnosis of gender dysphoria, and negative psychiatric experiences, working with psychiatrists and even psychologists and whatnot who are working with the individual through transitioning, really experiencing that these professionals just generally had a lack of knowledge about what it means to be transgendered, to be a transgender person, and so lack of experience, same thing, and lack of empathy, not really caring about trans issues, even though they're working with them. So let's move to gender non-binary. So this would be a gender minority. I'll be right back. Okay. So, gender non-binary people don't identify as entirely male or female, and that's what we talked about before. So how this this graphic right here kind of illustrates in society how most people say, expect that a person identifies as either male or female. But for gender non-binary people, they say, I don't identify in those particular boxes. I'm not male. So like on how most questionnaires, even like census data and stuff like that, says one of the first questions, like, what's your gender, male or female? Non-binary people don't identify as either, exclusively at least. So it's possible that they may feel, some identity as a little bit masculine at times, a little bit feminine at times, but the main impetus is on how they don't identify so strictly with this idea of being either a man or woman, despite what they may look like. They may appear as what we traditionally think of as a woman, but if they identify as non-binary, then they don't identify as being a woman. So oftentimes gender non-binary people will use pronouns like they, them, their. So if you see on a lot of us on Canvas have our what our preferred pronouns are. A lot of people have he, him, his, and a lot of people on our have she, hers, and whatnot. And also there's some people who have can go by either she or they, or he or they, or exclusively they, them, their. This is a really good video of experiences of non-binary people explaining to the world of what it's like to not fit into those boxes of strictly man or woman. It's a really good video on that. I want you guys to watch. And so a lot of them talk about, not just fitting into that definition of man or woman particularly. Talk about difficulties in this video of being non-binary. So people, for instance, thinking that an individual identifies as being a man, and may appear and have characteristics that are like facial hair or whatever that is more stereotypically associated with men, but their gender identity may be, non-binary, and so they may go by they, them, their, but people keep on calling them he because of maybe a beard or something like that. So having to correct people on just basic information of like how you identify. So a good way to find out someone's gender identity, if you have any questions about it, is just to ask what they prefer to be called as far as their pronouns go. And this is a good video as well of Audrey Masson Hyde talking about what it's like to be gender non-binary, and they do a very good job at that. They talk about Audrey talks about their development into being non-binary, and how they were treated in society. Getting messages from society saying things like, well, your sexual anatomy is either male or female, should match your gender expression, and what sort of effect that had on Audrey. So now we'll talk about intersex individuals. This is another qualitative study that was done on just what it's like to be intersexed, have sexual anatomy that is a mixture of male and female anatomy, and three main themes emerged from that. So kind of like what we were talking about before, they get all these people, individuals who are intersex people, and ask them, come up with standard questions that they're going to ask each of the individuals and whatnot, record the responses that the people say, and then analyze all the responses to see, is there any commonality between the experience of all these different intersex people. And so three themes emerged. The first theme was managing silence. So not feeling able to say to one's friends or coworkers or things like that about their being intersexed, having male and female sexual anatomy. And so such stigma in our society saying that one should have either fully male sexual anatomy or either fully female sexual anatomy, that belief in our society makes a lot of these people, this research show, silent and not talk about their sexual anatomy, even if people assume wrong of their sexual anatomy. And so coping with difference, kind of similar, just feeling othered, having this, feeling like there's a problem with them, even though they have a mixture of male and female anatomy. And so one of the individuals from this study gave the example that their parents always separated them from their siblings when they were bathing because they wanted to hide the ambiguous, I don't like that word, more like a mixture of male and female sexual anatomy. And the third theme was development of acceptance. So asking these intersex individuals what it's like to be intersex, be an intersex individual. One of the third major theme was development of acceptance of being an intersex individual. Peer support was one of the most helpful things in developing that acceptance, even in the face of society who may say, you should have surgery so that you fit into the binary of either man or woman that your sexual anatomy matches. So, what effect does this have psychologically, hearing day in, day out that you're either your sexual anatomy is supposed to be either male, strictly male, or strictly female? Alright. Sexual orientation, or orientations, chapter 9. I do like this chapter a lot. I think that you guys are probably, ahead of where I was as far as like when I was taking this class back in 2008 or something like that, 2006 when I graduated high school. I think that y'all are probably farther along as far as understanding the variations of sexual orientation, sexual minorities, and stuff like that. But, I've really come to appreciate learning about the various sexual orientations and whatnot, and the research on that. So without further ado, so the basics of sexual orientation, like I was talking about. So this is kind of how, most of the U.S. kind of thinks about sexual orientation. It's all about anatomical sex. So, anatomical sex of man with male sexual anatomy or a woman with female sexual anatomy being attracted to those with either the same sexual anatomy as yourself or different from the sexual anatomy as the person. So heterosexual, like men attracted to women, women attracted to men, and men being those with male sexual anatomy and women being those with female sexual anatomy. Same for homosexual people, so men attracted to other men, and then women attracted to other women. Bisexual, men attracted to both women and men, and women attracted to men and women. So, where we can get a little more advanced or nuanced in our notion of sexual orientation is to remember what we learned about gender identity, that, being female as far as gender identity is more to do with identifying as a woman than it does necessarily have some sort of reflection on what your sexual anatomy is. Same thing for men, identifying as a man more so than having male sexual anatomy necessarily. Whoops, this didn't get... Try that again. Okay. And so we'll get to this in a second here. Attracted to other men, women, both, or neither. So men, people who identify as a man, attracted to other men. Then homosexual, man attracted to women. Heterosexual, attracted to both. Bisexual, attracted to neither. Attracted to no attraction would be asexual. And then attraction to men, women, and non-binary gender people, then that would be pansexual, which we'll get to later today. And the same thing for women, people who identify as a woman being attracted to those who identify as women would be homosexual, and then men, heterosexual, both, bisexual, neither, asexual, all of the above, pansexual. And then non-binary people attracted to women, men, both, and neither. It's not so clear cut whether non-binary people are heterosexual, homosexual, and all that. So it kind of throws a little curveball in our how we conceptualize things as far as sexual orientation. I think that's probably something that Gray will probably be talking about. I haven't had a chance to listen to their talk yet. So we just talked about gender identity. We just talked about gender identity for yourself and sexual orientation. Let's talk about... Man, I looked over these and I thought they were all in sequence. Alright. So now let's look at gender identity of those who you're attracted to and what that may mean about sexual orientation. So, you may be attracted to people. Let's say you identify as a man and you're attracted to primarily those who identify as men as well. So that would be homosexual. Let's say you identify as a woman and you're attracted to those who identify as a man, heterosexual. And then, attracted to men, women, and those who are gender non-binary, that would be pansexual. So this is a little more nuanced here. It's not so simple as, the world's broken up into the heterosexual people, the homosexual people, bisexual people, pansexual people, sort of thing. It's like, well, let's look at this. Let's evaluate our operational definitions of what it means to be all these things. So one way to think about it is, well, so we've just briefly been talking about attraction, kind of tersely. We're like, attracted to men, attracted to women, or whatever. And it's like, okay, that may be the case for some people and whatnot. What about engaging in sexual behavior with men or women? So, like, let's take a man, for example, has sex with other men. Does this necessarily make him homosexual? And then same for women, having sex with other women. Does that necessarily make them homosexual? Is it engaging in sexual behavior? Or is it just the sexual desire and attraction to whichever gender you may be attracted to? You see what I'm saying? See, is it sexual behavior? Or is it the sexual desire and attraction? It's a good question to think about. So another important thing as well, we'll look at the gender unicorn in a second. It's also good to break things down into, and this is how a lot of psychologists study sexual orientation now. They're more so interested in, a lot of the literature talks about men who have sex with men, or women who have sex with women, as opposed to that label so much as heterosexual versus homosexual. And even further than that, talking about things like falling in love, like an emotional attraction or romantic attraction. And all these things for some people could be different. So some may, let's take a man for example, engages sexual behavior with men and women, but only feels desire and attraction towards men, and or only falls in love with men. So, it's not as so simple as what most of our society tends to think of sexual orientation. And then it's important to know, how does one particular person identify? All these things could be different. It's not just so simple as homosexual men only engage in sexual behavior with men throughout all of their life, only feel desire and attraction towards only men, only fall in love with men, and definitely identify as homosexual. It's just not as simple as that, even though there are plenty of people who that does describe. And it's good to remember to make our investigation here a little more nuanced. Think about people who engage in sexual behavior with those who are non-binary. And it's like, so this person, for example, may be, let's back up. Oh, this one's not. Back up. There we go. Okay. So let's talk about, let's say, for example, a man who engages in sexual behavior with primarily those who identify as non-binary gender. Even better, let's do sexual desire. So a man who's attracted to those, let's say for the sake of just the example right here, a man who's exclusively attracted to those who are non-binary, what would you call his sexual orientation then? Sexual orientation depends so much on gender. And so a lot of times people who are attracted to those who are non-binary are also sometimes, attracted to men and women too. And so that's where we get the pansexual thing from. Like I said, we'll talk a little more about it specifically a bit later. All right, the gender unicorn. For today. So last week we talked about here gender identity. So look at these black dots. This is like an example of someone who took this little quiz, which I highly encourage y'all to take this little quiz too. In fact, you could do it now, and that would be a great activity for you to do. So look at gender identity. We've talked about that. Do I identify as a man? Am I primarily masculine and whatnot? Or am I primarily feminine? Do I identify as a woman? So this person who took took this little survey here that I got off Google Images, she identifies as a woman, completely as a woman, and not at all like a man, but also identifies as, it says not other genders here, probably identifies as non-binary as well. So her pronouns are probably her, she, and whatnot, but also they, them. Okay. Gender expression for this person is very, pretty feminine, but also pretty masculine, and also pretty non-binary. Okay. And then the sex assigned at birth. That's easy to figure out pretty well. But what we're mostly interested in here today is the physical attraction. So a lot of people talk about, kind of leave it vague, and they're like, I've noticed in our culture now, we talk about someone's sexuality. Well, what does that mean? It's their, it's almost like a euphemism in a way. They're like, their sexuality, really they're talking about their sexual orientation, or more specifically than that, they're talking about which genders they're attracted to. So this person right here who took this little quiz is physically attracted to women, men, and non-binary folk and or transgender people. I guess that's all I want to say about that mostly. So just bring your attention to that. Alright, so to simplify things a little bit, what are the types of sexual orientations? Homosexual, orientation towards same sex as far as physical attraction goes. Bisexual, same sex and other sex. Heterosexual, orientation to the other sex. But here, pay attention to this right here. Here's a term that's very helpful for us: heteroflexibility and homoflexibility. If we were in person right now, I would love to ask you guys, what do y'all think heteroflexibility means? what does homoflexibility mean? So heteroflexibility, which according to our book, is people who are primarily attracted to the opposite sex as themselves, but also attracted to and engages in some sexual behaviors with other of the same sex. And then homoflexibility is basically the opposite. So primarily attracted to and engages in sexual behavior with the same sex, but also is attracted to and has some sexual behavior with the opposite sex. And let us remember that there are plenty of people out there who have no sexual attraction towards men, women, non-binary folk, and whatnot. And this is a perfectly natural and healthy variation within our population. So to focus on the sexual minorities, so up here we talk some about heterosexual people, but let's talk more specifically about sexual minorities. So probably the acronym that you guys are most familiar with is LGBTQ or LGBTQ+. So just so everyone's on the same page here, what does LGBTQ mean? L for lesbian, G for gay, B for bisexual, T for transgender, and Q for questioning and also queer. So we'll talk about that. But this is the primary acronym that if you're involved in politics and whatnot, this is the acronym that's used most of the time to talk about non-heterosexual, non-cisgender people. And then, I like this one too, LGBTQIA, I adding people who are intersex, and then A for people who are asexual. So another, sexual minority there added to the acronym list. Going a little bit more, LGBTQIAPK, the P adding for polyamorous, and I don't know what the deal is with the K, but supposedly it's supposed to represent pansexual people as well. So I'm not sure about adding the polyamorous because it doesn't necessarily have much to do with sexual orientation so much, but pansexual, sure. And I kind of have heard, like in just casual settings, people who are probably almost certainly cisgendered. So remember, cisgender meaning their sex assigned at birth. Let's say, for example, female, male, female sexual anatomy, grows up and their gender identity is female. That would be cisgender, as opposed to transgender people. So their sex assigned at birth could be, for example, male sexual anatomy, but they end up identifying as a woman later in life. So LGBTQ is the main political acronym for non-heterosexual, non-cisgender people. So very important. Oh, let's look up this real quick. I like this website a lot. Yep, my computer is not the newest. Alright, here it comes. Alright, and it's this long website here with different let's see if we can, different LGBTQ type definitions. So let's look at something that we've looked at before. So like today we just talked about asexual people experiencing little or no sexual attraction to others and or a lack of interest in sexual relationships and behavior. That's a good definition. That's cool. Let's look at another one real quick. Excuse me. Bisexual, a person who experiences attraction to some men and women. Okay. Cisgender, we just talked about this. Gender description for when someone's sex assigned at birth and gender identity correspond in the expected way. So, and there is a lot of other definitions here all the way through. Gender identity, gender nonconforming, gender fluid. So this is a really good resource to just make sure you know all of these terms for the most part.